Journey Through Parenthood with Martina Bills.
Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm Martina Bills. Thanks for joining us here on the WSAZ Now Desk for Journey Through Parenthood. On this hot Monday in the summer, we are talking skincare, sunscreen, how to protect your family, everyone, from that most important UV index and UV rays that can be so harmful to people of any age. We're talking to Dr. Shane Cook. He's a dermatologist with Marshall Dermatology. A little bit about what sunscreen is the best to use, how to make sure everyone in your family is safe from those harmful rays.
The sun is most strong, we call it the UV index, and it's most strong from about 10 o'clock to 2 or 4 o'clock. So if you can be out of the sun during those hours, that would be best. If you can't, the sun protective clothing is super important. A wide brim hat, a long sleeve shirt, they make very fashionable sun protective clothing. And that's what I prefer compared to sunscreen. But if you are going to use sunscreen, such as on your face or other areas, we recommend an SPF of at least 30.
Mm-hmm. And talk about the SPF and where that comes into play, because I know we've heard that before, make sure it's SPF, but when you see those numbers, I know you're standing in a store and I see SPF 100. Talk about, does that make a difference in the long run?
Sure. So before, a few years ago, we didn't really think it made a difference. The American Academy of Dermatology still recommends an SPF of at least 30. There's a recent study that surveyed about 16 people and at the beach. So the first of the week, they took a sort of photo of their face and that assessed the damage. They put 100 on one side and 50 on the other. And then they rescanned them at the end of the week. And what it showed was the patients that had on the 50 side had significantly more sun damage compared to the 100 side. And so I recommend getting as strong SPF as you can. But the American Academy of Dermatology still recommends at least a 30 SPF.
Okay, let's talk about also what the sunscreen is based of, because I know, a lot of times you're getting the sprays, which is a lot easier to use from a parent's perspective, but then you see things that are mineral based. How much does that play a role in how protective it is?
Yeah, we're still unsure about the effects of the spray. Certainly, if you are going to use a spray, you want to be outside and maybe, downwind of your child or anyone else. For the chemical base versus mineral base, the mineral base are the safest. We're still unsure on some of the things in terms of the chemicals and what sort of other effects they would have. Most of them are very safe, and there's been plenty of studies to support that. For my kids, so I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we use mineral-based sunscreen on them.
Yeah. I've always seen the best, response from our faces and our bodies in general when I use mineral. I know everyone's different. What about skin checks? From a dermatology standpoint, I know how important it is. Explain that importance, and also when it comes to children, is that something you do as a dermatology physician?
It is. I recommend that everyone get at least one skin exam in their life. And based on their risks, the number of sunburns they have, the number of moles they have, maybe a family history that they have, we can sort of get them on a schedule. Some don't need a yearly skin check, and some need, a skin check every 6 months. And so I would just advise everyone to seek a board-certified dermatologist and get a visit for that initial skin exam.
Okay. And let's talk about skin cancer, the diagnosis and treatment, because I try to preach to my child when we're out in the sun all summer, what we're trying to do to prevent the skin cancer from happening from years from now. Is that kind of the right way to explain to my 11-year-old, hey, it might not creep up on you now. We're trying to protect our skin for years from now?
That's exactly right. Most of the time, so melanomas can come up even in the 20s. It's actually one of the most common cancers in females, age 20 to 35, but we see it in all ages. Most of the sun damage happens way before that time. Mm-hmm. And so even as I have a 5-year-old, and I sort of make sure he's covered up just because I don't want to have him dealing with that. So it's sometimes tough to convince a 5-year-old that he needs sunscreen on, but it's for the best.
Yeah. And what about as an adult with the skin cancer diagnosis and treatment? You know, how I know that it can be pretty rough for someone, and it doesn't seem like, oh, we're getting diagnosed with a cancer like breast cancer or a different kind of cancer inside your body, but the skin cancer being such a big organ of your body. Talk about how invasive it can be if not diagnosed and treated properly.
Right. I mean, all of these skin cancers are easily treated if we catch them early. And so the most important thing is you come to the dermatologist to get a skin evaluation. We'll look at you with a little light called a dermatoscope, and then we'll determine whether or not it needs a biopsy. And the biopsy is a very simple procedure that we perform in office. And if that biopsy catches it early, we treat it easily with the surgery. If for some reason the cancer is already spread, melanoma can be worse than breast cancer. It can be worse. You know, there are some other types of skin cancers that can be worse than, you know, the worst lung or any other kind of cancer you can think of. So it's just very important that we catch those early. There's many different chemotherapies that are available now for melanoma, fortunately. So even if it has progressed, we have some treatment options for those.
Okay. Is there anything else you can think of, Dr. Cook, to you know, really hit home how important the skin protection is for people of all ages, but especially those little ones?
You know, my little ones mean the world to me, and so I couldn't imagine not doing something to protect them. And so I would just urge you to make sure your children are protected. I do see lots of time in lots of patients that they'll make sure their kids have sunscreen, but then they'll come in with a bad sunburn because they forgot to put it on themselves. So I would just, in these hot summer months, I would just remind you to make sure you're applying it to yourself too.
So Dr. Shane Cook, a dermatologist with Marshall Dermatology, a lot of good information. He is a father of some very young children, and he says he prefers to use the skin protection, the sun protection as clothing, like the shirts. They have UV ray protection in the shirts, and some swim shirts have it, and hats. But if you're going to go with the sunscreen, the higher the SPF, the better. Even though the American Academy of Dermatology recommends at least a 30 SPF, Dr. Shane Cook recommends the higher number, the better. And really with I know I have really found since my child has been young and we've been out in the sun all summer every year, really it's trial kind of each year depends on what sunscreen works better for her. When she was younger, some sunscreens did irritate her skin, so we kind of had to play the game of which one works best for her and just really find one that works for you and your family and not just your children. Dr. Shane Cook says he sees patients come in that they protect their child but not themselves. So Dr. Shane Cook with Marshall Health with dermatology, and he says the most commonly diagnosed kind of cancer is melanoma. So something to keep in mind with these temperatures continuing to rise all summer long, and really being out in the summer sun is a nice way to beat the heat when you're at the pool, but those UV rays is really something that can wreak havoc on someone's health. So if you want to reach out to Marshall Dermatology, if you need a physician to see you for a skin check, you can contact them there. And as always, Dr. Shane Cook, we appreciate him taking the time to speak to us in Journey Through Parenthood. We're here every Monday and Wednesday at 10 o'clock. We hope you have a great Monday and a great work week.